Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Progress with number 4 in the series Viewer Games. This game is from a viewer, Arkadyi. I believe he's from Russia. He sent me 3 blitz games that he played on the internet and I picked one of them. The time control is 5 minutes per player for the whole game, so we cannot expect a very high level. But still, I thought it was an instructive game, so let's have a look how Arkadyi got on. Arkadyi is black in this game. His opponent opened with e4, c5 from Arkadyi, f4 and knight c6. Knight f3, e6 and d4. These first moves are logical. As I always say, it's important in the opening to develop your pieces and occupy the center or have influence on the center and then put your king safe. The first moves are very logical. Here probably Arkadyi should have taken on d4, swap a pawn from the side with the central pawn, then the knight takes back and we have an equal position. Arkadyi decided on knight ge7, which is okay, it develops another piece, but here white could have annoyed black with the d5 move, kicking the knight. You cannot really go to d4 because of knight takes, c takes, queen takes, and for example e takes d5, e takes d5, and white has won a pawn. So after d5 you have to go to a5 for example, and then d6 is an annoying move. Yes, the other knight can then go to the nice square on c6, but let's just put a few moves on the board. Knight c3, and you have to be careful now that you don't let the knight come to b5 and then to c7 with all sorts of problems. So you have to play a6 to take the b5 square away. And then for example bishop e3, and then your c5 pawn is hanging, so you have to play b6, bishop e2 for example, and the d6 pawn is really a thorn in black's position. This is a very nice position for white. So all that happened after d4 and then knight g to e7. As I said, it would have been better if black had taken on d4. But white decided not to play d5. He took on c5, picking up a pawn. Also a good move. And now Arkadyi played a bad move. He played d7 to d5, and that is okay, you would say, based on the principles I always talk about occupying the center. That move d5 is now really occupying the center, having an influence on the center. But there's a special move in chess which white should have played here, which is called the en passant move. If your pawn is on the 5th rank and your opponent plays one of the neighboring pawns 2 squares up, then you're allowed to take as if the pawn had only moved 1 square up. So in this case, white is allowed to take with the c5 pawn on d6 and take the d5 pawn away. And he has to do it now. He cannot make another move and then do it later. It's either now or never. But this is allowed. It's called the en passant move. A very rare occasion that it happens. And maybe both white and black had forgotten about this rule here, because it's the best move in the position. It wins another pawn, and again the white pawn on d6 is a real thorn in black's side now. The knight hangs, so you have to go to g6 and then e5. White is 2 pawns up with an overwhelming position. That pawn on d6 is well protected and really cramps black's position, takes away a lot of space. The white player did not take en passant, but played a developing move, bishop b5. Arkadyi kicked that bishop, and white decided to take on c6. Here, knight takes c6 is a very logical move. It moves the knight to a better square, and it frees up the bishop on f8 to be developed. Instead, Arkadyi took with the b pawn. So this is an instructive moment. Here, taking with the knight is really preferable over taking with the pawn for developing reasons. After b takes c6, black's position is very cramped and he'll have trouble developing all his pieces. White castled, and Arkadyi took on e4, winning the pawn back. The queens get swapped, and the knight is attacked and has a very nice square on e5. It's threatening knight takes f7, winning the rook in the corner. So Arkadyi plays king e8, and white keeps developing, knight c3. Not only developing, also attacking the pawn on e4, which Arkadyi could have defended with the pawn move f7 to f5. Instead, Arkadyi played g6, wanting to develop his bishop to g7 and finish his development. But it costs a pawn, and not only a pawn, the knight is now eyeing up the very nice d6 square. Bishop g7 as planned from Arkadyi, and there comes that knight. Knight d6 check, and now there are two knights looking at the f7 square. White has a very nice position now. The king is in check, so king f8, and knight e takes f7. Arkadyi saved his rook with rook g8, but he had another possibility here. He could have played bishop d4 check, king h1, bishop takes c5. Yes, you lose the rook in the corner, but you can get rid of that very annoying knight on d6, and you can hope to win that knight that's now stuck on h8. It's still better for white, but this was an active possibility for black. His pieces are now looking a lot better, and as I said, he can hope to win that knight back that's stuck in the corner, which will keep the material deficit to a minimum. Not easy to see in a blitz game, so rook g8 is the understandable move from Arkadyi. Knight came back to e5, good move. Knight f5, trying to challenge the d6 knight that way. And white decided to take on c6, and he's now 3 pawns up. Arkadyi took that annoying knight on d6, c takes, and played bishop b7. Developing a piece, attacking the knight, and having a look on the long diagonal. Good move. Here, white could have consolidated his position by playing knight e5. Wonderful square for the knight. It blunts the bishop on g7. It supports a d6, d7 pawn push. And it's very difficult to get rid of the knight there. If you take the knight, the pawn takes back, and then the d6 pawn gets even stronger. This would have given white a simply winning position with that very, very strong knight on e5. Instead, the white player decided to play knight e7, and now Arkadyi gets some counterplay. Bishop d4 check, strong move, king in the corner, and his rook was attacked, so Arkadyi plays rook g7. Here the white player played c3, and it was difficult to foresee, but this was a losing move. Yes, he wants to develop his remaining pieces. He wants to play bishop d2 and get the rook to a central file. And he was probably worried that he would lose the b2 pawn by playing bishop d2. Well, let's look. If he had played bishop d2 and you take on b2, then there is rook a b1 skewering both bishops. So it looks like white is going to win a piece. Well, we have to look a bit further because it's not that simple. Bishop a3 is, yes, you can take that piece, but then there's bishop takes d6 and the knight is suddenly attacked 3 times, and the knight cannot play because then the rook on b7 hangs. So the best move here is knight takes g6, check. I mean, you're going to lose that knight anyway, so you might as well get a pawn for it with check, so there's no time to take on b7 for black. Ace takes g6, and for example rook takes, king takes, and white is much better here, has 2 extra pawns, but still has to convert his advantage. But white played c2, c3, hitting the bishop, and after bishop c5 it is actually remarkable that even though white is 3 pawns up, he is now losing. And this is all because of the bad position of the knight on e7. Black threatens to take on d6, and then the knight has no squares and will get lost. White panicked here, played f5, and after g takes f5, he completely overlooked the threat of checkmate. In principle, the f5 move was not a bad move. It opens the bishop diagonal. There's things like bishop h6, winning the rook as an option, and then he tries to open lines against black's king. So the f4, f5 move makes some sense, but on practical grounds it fails, because after g takes f5 there is a checkmate threat. White didn't see it. He just took on f5 with the knight and got checkmated on the spot with bishop takes g2. In the last viewers game of Stacy, viewers game number 3, I said that the pattern with a bishop on b7 and a rook on the g file against white's king is something that occurs a lot. Well, in the next game that we look at, this pattern occurs again, this time with a checkmate on the spot. White was already in big trouble after g takes f5. He has to give material with rook g1, he has to protect the g2 square, and then, for example, bishop takes g1, king takes g1, rook takes g2, king f1, rook h2, and black has a winning position. A sudden end to the game, checkmate, was overlooked by white, and a nice win from Arkadyi. White could have avoided all this trouble if he had played on the 18th move the knight back to e5 instead of e7. The knight on e5 would have held white's position together and not allow any counterplay from black. Hope you enjoyed Arkadyi's win. Hope you found it instructive. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe, and I'm looking forward to your comments. You also may want to check out my main channel, Chess to Impress. There's lots of material there as well. This is Rick from Chess to Progress. Thank you for watching.